Hello there guys, Teacher Krishna here and welcome to our next class for the 4th unit. This is a class that is part of Behave School and 8th BYS. We're working on the subject science and of course this is week number 30. Let's go over our presentation and let's start with our end in mind. Students will be able to determine the characteristics of several climate regions that were previously identified in a world map. And here you have a summary of the activities that you need to complete today. So, first of all, use the map you colored last week to write down a description of each one of the climate regions you identified. So, remember that last week you identified at least 3 countries per each one of the climate regions. But that project was still incomplete because right now we need to add more information about characteristics for each one of the climate regions. That will be the first thing you need to do. Then number 2, make sure to complete the book exercises. And once you are done with those 2 activities, you have to create a compilation of your work in one document, either Word or PDF, and upload it to Educativa. Okay? So just to refresh your mind, we are working on the topic climate regions. And today we are going to be located from pages 179 to 183. Make sure to have your book with you afterwards so you can, of course, take a look at the content and complete all of the previous activities that I told you about. So, we're going to start talking about several climate regions, and we're going to start by having a dry climate. And of course, it is represented by this picture right here. And just like the name suggests, it is a space where there is almost no water at all. This climate states that the amount of evaporation is higher than the one of precipitation. There is not much evaporation because there isn't much water in the first place. And by the way, there are different classifications for the dry climate, and the first one is semi-arid. They are located at the edges of deserts and are known as steppes. Even though they are dry, they get enough precipitation for short grass to grow. So the picture that you have right here is of a different type of dry climate, which is this one, arid. These regions are generally deserts. It is important to notice that they can be cold and rocky as well. They get less than 25 centimeters of rain a year. So, semi-arid are going to be basically in the edges or almost out of the desert. And of course, they are going to have some vegetation around. But in the middle of deserts or other rock-like formations, they are not going to get precipitation at all. So only specialized species can live in there. For example, cactus. That is a specialized plant that can actually live in these extreme conditions with no water and almost no resources at all. And when we talk about animals, there are several insects that can actually survive in there. All right, now we continue and we are going to talk about temperate marine climates. And probably this might look a little bit similar to Guatemala, but the climate region that we're talking about can also be related to Guatemala and some other locations around the world. They are found around the coasts and temperate zones. Humid subtropical is the first classification, and they have the warmest temperate marine climates. And they are usually wet and warm. This changes according to the seasons they go through. They have way warmer and rainier summers than winters. So in the classifications that we're going to have right here, we are going to be combining summer as well as winter. And just like we mentioned here in humid subtropical, they have a very warm and rainier summers and winters, okay? Now we're going to go with the second classification, which is marine west coast. They are found at a latitude of 40 degrees. Winters are typically mild and rainy. The precipitation during summer can constantly vary. This is something important to take into consideration. So, while in some cases in the marine west coast, there can be a lot of precipitation, there can be very little precipitation. So, it is going to depend in many different factors, but there is not let's say, a standard already for marine west coast type of climate. Now, we have a Mediterranean type of climate, which includes summers are warm and dry, while the winters are cool and rainy. Agriculture is very important in this climate. So this is the one that is related to Guatemala, the Mediterranean type of climate, because usually summers are a little bit more warm and dry, and during winter we get a little bit more rain. And unfortunately, right now the climate conditions have been changing a little bit more, and we don't have like specific months like we used to do a couple of years ago, in which actually we will know for sure that it was going to rain. But it still enters in this classification. Now let's continue with temperate continental climate. And they will actually look something like this. As long as I remember it, this is a city in Canada that is close to a very beautiful mountain that is right behind the city. So this type of climate is not much influenced by oceans. They usually have extremes of temperature. They are only found in northern hemisphere because there are not large enough portions of land to have this type of climate in the southern hemisphere. So in order for this climate to exist, you need a very large portion of continent land. So when we analyze different sections in the southest regions of our planet, we're going to notice that they are not large enough, let's say. That's why this type of climate is only found in the northern section or in the northern hemisphere of our planet. And it is going to be divided into a humid continental. There are usually polar and tropical air masses interacting above this land. Polar air masses are dominant during winter, and tropical air masses are dominant during summer. And of course, these air masses are going to determine a lot the way the climate is going to be in those regions. Because if there is a big body of cold air, what's going to happen is that all of the weather in general is going to be pretty cold. While if the body of air is pretty warm, then of course the rest of the weather is going to be warm as well. There is another one which is going to be subarctic, in which summers are short and cool, while winters are long and bitterly cold. So, in some regions, like I was mentioning, especially in Canada and some northern sections of North America, the weather is pretty much going to be cold all the time. Even in summer, it is going to be pretty cold. All right, now we continue talking about polar climates. And this is a very beautiful city in Canada, by the way. It's astonishing the way it looks at the top of these mountains full of snow. And it includes the coldest climate regions in the whole world. And the first one we can talk about is tundra. It extends over Canada and Russia. The permanently frozen soil is known as permafrost. So basically all of the ground that you see right here, it is never going to be unfrozen. So that is why it is called permafrost, because no matter what time of the year you go there, you are always going to find a thick layer of ice or snow at the top of the ground. And the ice is way too thick for trees to grow there. But mosses, grasses, and of course wildflowers are more common in there. So vegetation is very limited, as well as the animal species that you can find there due to the extreme conditions one more time. And of course we can make this comparison between a desert and of course a polar climate. And of course they are totally opposites. One is extremely hot while the other one is super cold. But since they both have extreme conditions, life is very limited there. And also we have an ice cap. The average temperature are always below freezing. Remember that the freezing point of the temperature is 0 degrees Celsius. So, one more time, no matter in what day of the year you visit these places, the weather in general is going to be freezing. And the whole climate region is covered with snow. The intense cold makes the air pretty dry. All right, guys. So with this, we are going to finish our lesson for today. Just remember to go back to the activities section that I shared with you before. So you can, of course, complete everything that we have planned for today. Thank you all for coming. Always take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes during the Zoom session. Goodbye.